Today we're going to be comparing Zensphere against DIVA and Serum 2. This was a comment on our social media channels where someone asked, can't they just make the sounds that are in Zensphere in Serum 2? Let's find out. Before we get started, I want to say I have nothing but respect and admiration for the people that have created DIVA and Serum 2. They are some of the pioneers in our field. I think it will be super interesting if you want to know how is Zensphere different. We're going to look at CPU impact. We're going to look at general sound quality, ease of use, how do these synth sounds fit into a track, and more. So let's dive in. I think it's also very interesting not just to listen to how do they sound in general, but how mix ready are they? We're basically letting the bass go straight to the master, maybe an important detail. Let's do an ABC comparison because then we can hear things, I think, the most clear. Here's DIVA. And here's Serum. And Zensphere. For me, it's very interesting to hear that exactly the concept of making Zensphere patches in such a way that they just fit into your track. That's what we did with all this outboard gear here in the studio when we recorded the synths. Does really make a big difference because to my ears, when I bring it up this bass patch of Zensphere, it slots into the track much closer and without overwhelming the kick and the low end than the other synth. Great to hear that the concept of what I set out to do with this is working and it removes a lot of the further processing that you would need to do to get those sounds to fit into a mix. So we're going to do a CPU comparison. How much CPU do these synths use up? This is all running on a M1 Max MacBook Pro with 64 gigabytes of RAM. And my buffer latency for all of this will be set at 128 samples, which is kind of the fast standard that I use. Let's check out this pad. What I'm seeing is if I'm playing like 3-4 note chords, we're hitting about 25%. So here we are now in DIVA. Let's have a listen. Cool sound. I'm a little shocked on the CPU consumption. Holy shit, that's intense. Let's have a look where Zensphere lands on CPU consumption. As you can see on the left, audio settings are all the same for the latency. So as I'm sure you can see, we're barely hitting 7-8% on this. Yeah, huge difference. Let's have a look at the interfaces. The goal with Zensphere was to create an interface that was very low cognitive overload, where you could take one glance and basically recognize what's happening with your patch. So if you see here, for example, now, I can switch in a delay or a reverb. Obviously, I have an arpeggiator. I have 2 amp envelopes. I have a high pass filter, a limiter, some saturation, and a normal voltage controlled filter, and that's it. But there's some cool things that we did in here. For example, having a high cut and a low cut on both the delay and the reverb is huge because it just makes fitting them into your track so much easier. Let me show you. You hear how the low end of the delay is now actually overwhelming the kick and the whole track a bit? Let me clean that up now. Super fast and straightforward, and that was always the goal with Zensphere, is to make this really fast and clean. Another super nice thing that we managed to do is create a really nice function on the way that the voltage controlled filter works. Let me show you this. Basically, this attack level makes all the difference. Most synths have the envelope, the amount for the filter, and then it's tweaking it, but the attack level allows you to like make it more smooth or more full, and this is something that took us weeks to make, but have a listen. So most filters operate this way. Like that has a nice ring to it, but I don't want the filter opening that much right at the beginning. And that's what we created this attack level for. Check this out. Just one example of some of the things that we did here, but you know, there's a bunch of stuff. I don't want to go too much into the details. There's different videos on the channel also where I show all of the Zensphere functions. This video is sponsored by RapidFlow. Yeah, we don't have a sponsor for this video, but I do want to tell you, Zensphere is still on sale, and also it's part of the Everything Bundle, which is all our templates, all our samples, all our plugins, all in one for an insane deal. It also includes all the masterclasses from the artists that we work with. I want to show you now the difference with the other interfaces and maybe also like a philosophy type difference on how these work. So I'm just going to say it how I see it. The way, for me personally, this, in my opinion, it just like kind of just hurts my mind. And I'm an experienced synth programmer, and I appreciate all the possibilities that are in here. But if I look at this, especially if I'm looking at this for a long time, it just kind of does my head in. And it's great to have all these options if you want to do some super deep sound design, but I don't find this like a super intuitive interface to use. Let's have a listen actually also with the same kind of tweaking on the filter envelope to see how close we can get it. So this is the exact example. I can't get this to be funky and deep and groovy in the track because I'm missing a parameter for my feeling, which is the attack peak level. If you want to do deep sound design, this is great. If you want to just quickly load patches that work in your track and not have to tweak them too much, then for me, this is just like massive overwhelm. Like breaks my concentration and flow, which is probably why I don't use DIVA much, although it does sound really great. And then Serum 2, which, I mean, what a sick design. Honestly, like I have to say, I love the design. It's very, very cool, like the colors and everything. And the Serum 2 upgrade is amazing, but I find it massively overwhelming. I'm sure if you work with this all the time, it's like a piece of cake and like cool, and you know, like it's great that you're able to do like 1,000 envelopes and stuff. Let's see if I can achieve the same thing now with the envelope on the filter. So it's easier here because we do have the amount of modulation that we can set positive and negative. So this is brilliant. It's very, very cool. Having said that, I mean, again, it's awesome to have so many possibilities if you want to get like super deep and nerdy on sound design. But I don't use these synths as great as they sound because this just overwhelms me. If I'm composing music and I'm like, what I tend to do, kind of like dancing around the studio and digging what I'm doing, and then I have to like peer into this to try to like find something. It just overwhelms me a bit. You know, different tastes for different folks. For my taste, personally, I just find it difficult to work with. So let's just listen to a few patches now to give you an idea of just the sound quality of these devices. How do they sound? Amazing sound design. It sounds super nice. I mean, beautiful sounds. To my ears, the one thing that I'm missing a bit is more like the analog mojo, like a bit of drift and stuff, which I'm sure you can do. I just don't know how to. I'm sure there are places where you can like add some more LFO modulation or some unpreciseness here. If you know how to do that, let me know in the comments because I'd love to know more. Let's do the same with DIVA. Let's listen to a couple of pads from DIVA. That is a beautiful sound. There's a reason DIVA is the benchmark for analog digital CPU generated sounds. Does sound really good. And I know that you can, like here, I know you can kind of detune all this and make everything kind of a bit more wobbly, which I think is great. Okay, let's check out some patches on Zensphere. Everything I ever wanted. Okay, yeah, this is a good one. I love this one. And if you're wondering why the CPU is so high, it's because we're inside one of my templates where I produce in. So this is like real world use. Let's check out this one. Because we did use samples for this, we also have some nice instruments that you probably won't find on synths that are mathematically CPU computational based. That's one of my favorites. Yeah, there's a lot more sounds in here. There's 222 presets that I've designed using the synth. And yeah, there's a nice little trick. Actually, there's 222 raw waveforms taken from the synth. So for example, let's assume that you like this arpeggio tape loop, but you want to try that with a different sound. You can just change out the waveform underneath the preset. So this is a way to keep the sound design active, but actually change out whatever preset is running underneath it. Okay, so this was a comparison of Zensphere against these two heavyweight synths, some of the leaders in our industry. I can't believe I actually just did this comparison. What do you think? Tell me in the comments, please, how did it sound like to you? I tried to make this as unbiased as possible, which is kind of impossible because I made the synth, but I kept all the levels and everything as close as I could. I think the one place where it's very obvious is CPU load is almost nothing on Zensphere compared to the others. So if your computer is on the edge, that could be very interesting. Now, an important detail is because Zensphere sounds are sampled and recorded off of instruments, you can't turn short percussive bass into a pad. Whereas with the other ones who are computational based, you could just change all the parameters and completely morph it, which is why in Zensphere we try to capture a broad variety of sounds. So you can find something like a raw waveform close to what you're thinking and then tweak that. So that is definitely a big difference. The goal with it was always to just make it as easy as possible to use with the highest possible quality of sound. Recording all of these analog synths, and actually a lot of them are in boxes now because I don't use them all the time anymore because they're all in Zensphere. So recording all of them was always something that I wanted to do, and putting it into an interface that's like low cognitive overload and also low CPU load was something that I've been wanting to do since years, and I'm so happy that I've done it now. We're super happy to share these sounds with you and give you access to these sounds, but I think you can't go wrong with any of these synths. Like, they're all super amazing. They all have their uses. They're all quite different, so I hope that this video gives you a good overview of what would best suit you, or what is your next potential gap that you may want to fill with your sound design. To summarize, I think if you're looking for something that is extremely flexible and that you can load your own waveforms into it and just do kind of crazy stuff, maybe also for more like bass heavy, crazy, like modulation based music, then I think you can't go wrong with Serum 2. If you want something that's like super analog and vibey and there's like dozens and dozens of presets packed for, and that's just sounds incredibly analog considering it's actually computational based, then I think DIVA is incredible, and it's still the benchmark, I think, for analog sounding synths generated on a CPU. And if you want something that is extremely easy to use and immediately gives you mix-ready sounds and is super easy to manage and dial into the kinds of sounds that you want to have, and is actually based off of hardware. So if you want to have like access to the sounds of synths from Sequential, Moog, Vermona, I don't even remember, there's so many that we sampled for it, but it's like 18 synths that are in there, then yeah, Zensphere is a really, really good option. I'm very curious to hear your take on this, to hear what you thought of this comparison. If you would like to see more VST plugins compared against Zensphere, let me know. And also to let you know that we are going to be doing expansion packs for Zensphere. So the first one that's up is the Prophet 10, which is sitting over here behind me. I'm going to be sound designing on that, and I'm going to be creating 3 different packs that's coming up soon. And then I'm going to go in depth and sample more instruments to keep expanding the sound palette of Zensphere. All right, that's been it from me today. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, share this with another music lover, that always helps us. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing your comments and knowing what you think about this. All right, take it easy. See you later. Bye-bye.